Hi, it's Daphne and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to show you the books I read in February and March. In the last 2 months, I've read a total of 8 books and I'm excited to talk to you about them. So in no particular order, I'm just gonna run through the 8 books I read. The first one I'm gonna talk about is Anna K, which was the first book I got once I signed up to Book of the Month Club. This book is about the elite high schoolers in Manhattan and Greenwich. Also, I was excited because this is based off Anna Karenina, which I actually tried to read like a few years ago, but it's so dense and I just never finished it. I just couldn't get that into it. So in my own words, I would say that this book is about Anna, who has this super perfect boyfriend. He's off in college. She's like a freshman at like Yale or something fancy. She's been with him since she was like 13 and he was like 15 or something, which is already a little strange. So she hasn't really been with anybody else. She feels like she has to put on a certain facade to fit in with their elite society, to be like the perfect girlfriend, the perfect future wife to her boyfriend. And this Alexia guy is kind of just like a bad boy. He's really handsome, he kind of sleeps around a bit, but he falls in love with Anna and they're irresistibly drawn together. And then there's a lot of other backstories. Like, it's not mainly about their love story. There's like a lot of plot about her brother and his girlfriend, and then way too much about the brother's girlfriend's sister, Lily, which I found so boring. She's like going through a lot of issues. There's a lot of drug use in this book as well, so if you're not about that, this is definitely not for you, because it's a lot of high schoolers using drugs, which is, and seems over-exaggerated. I don't know if people really act like that, because if they do, that's a shame. And another guy that fell in love with a Lily. There's a lot of boy craziness and a lot of like things I couldn't sympathize with or anything. That's why I didn't end up liking it, but it also might be because I'm a 25-year-old woman and I don't know if young adult is for me anymore. I don't know. Like I like to sometimes watch shows or animes where the characters take place in high school and it can still be cute and fun, but like this just didn't do it for me. That doesn't mean it won't do it for you. Like, it depends on your age. Like, if you're in high school and you want to see maybe like what the life of elites are like, and maybe like you can relate to this better, it'd be worth a shot. So definitely still check it out if you think this young adult style is more up your alley and you want to get a slice of life of the rich and elite versus your average high schooler. Unfortunately, this book took me almost the whole month of February, I believe, to read, and I didn't enjoy it that much personally. I think it was just a little too immature. Like, I knew it was a young adult book, but the writing was just kind of like not inspiring. I didn't feel the emotion. Like, I think the idea of the story was good, but the writing style for me just didn't draw out any emotion. So it was like the two characters were like falling quickly in love, but I had no sympathy or anything or like any connection with them as the reader. So I found that disappointing and made it really difficult to get through. And there's a shock ending. Like, you're supposed to feel a certain way, and I just mostly felt shocked and annoyed. But a lot of people did give this a good review, so if you're interested in Book of the Month, just check out the reviews and see what else they say. But personally, this book didn't work for me. I could tell you what I wrote actually in my review. Okay, so on Book of the Month, you can either love it, like it, or dislike it, and 14% of people dislike this book on there, including myself. And I wrote, I really wanted to like this book. Did like that it had an Asian American female lead. Thought the Kimmy storyline was dragged out and boring. The love between Anna and V was not believable or moving. So that's my 2 cents. I do still want to give Book of the Month Club a good shot. So I ordered 2 new books. So I have one for March and I have one for April, but I haven't started those yet. So the next book I want to talk about is Bringing Down the Duke. This was also on Book of the Month Club recommendation, I believe, but I just picked this off Amazon. And I read this book in like 2 days. I couldn't put it down. I thought it was really, really good. So it takes place in 1879, and it's about this woman, Annabelle. She's not very well off. She's really struggling financially. She has to live with like her really shitty, unpleasant cousin because women basically had no rights back then, and they need a man to like be able to do anything in society. She basically had to be his servant so she could stay living there because he's an ass. She's really, really smart because before she had to live with her cousin, and her dad and her mom were still alive. Her dad would like teach her a lot of stuff, so she was very well educated, and she actually got into Oxford, which is Oxford University, as one of the first few women that get to attend. And she's on a scholarship, and in order to get the money, she has to do all these women's suffrage rights activism stuff. So she has to hand out flyers and things like that. And in part of doing that, she runs across this duke who has a lot of influence politically, and somehow their lives kind of intertwine, and they end up falling in love, but he thinks he can't be with her because of the social status and all the things he has to uphold, and it's their struggle with being really attracted to each other, but she doesn't necessarily want to be with him if he can't marry her and things like that. Not because she wants the money, but because she's literally says she's not a whore. And she has a history of falling for someone and going in that direction with him, and then him abandoning her, which didn't do her any good emotionally or in a socially acceptable way for this time period. But it was very, very steamy, definitely emotionally moving. The writing is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's explicit in the steaminess, but it's just you can really feel the attraction, and it's a fun read. I read it in 2 days. It's not a short read, but you're what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? I need to see if they're gonna work out. What are they gonna do? So that's why I read it so fast. I would definitely recommend this. If you know me in real life, I'll loan it to you. The story takes place for a good chunk of it at the Duke's estate, and he's very rich, he's got a lot of responsibilities, and she kind of gets stuck there in a way because she got invited to a party by his brother, and then they get snowed in, and then she gets sick, so whatever, they really get to know each other because she's staying there for a while, and then he eventually wants her to stay longer. Fun read. Another book I read in the last 2 months is Well Met. This was fun. I read this in a few days. It's very lighthearted. I like that the characters are around my age. So the female lead in this is 24 turning 25. And then the hero, the main guy lead, is a few years older than her. And this story is about how the two of them work at a Renaissance fair. So Emily's the main lead and Simon's the guy lead. Simon runs this Renaissance fair in his small town. Emily moved to this town to help her sister out because she was in a car accident, and she's gonna help with the chores around the house and help get her meds and help take care of her sister's daughter and things like that. So her sister's daughter, I don't remember her name, wanted to be a part of this Renaissance fair they put on, be a character in it that the town does in the summertime. But apparently in order for minors to be in it, they need an adult to participate as well. So Emily does that for her niece, and Simon's kind of this rough, not very nice guy who runs it. He doesn't seem to like Emily very much. He seems very short-tempered with her. He also happens to be the high school English teacher, which I literally died laughing at because I don't know, I just find that hilarious that I'm at the age where a person my age would fall in love with an English teacher. I just find that hilarious. Emily has some history with a shitty ex-boyfriend, and she doesn't really know why Simon hates her so much, but inevitably they slowly fall in love, and their story is really cute. And it's a really fun read, very lighthearted, easy read. So if you're in the mood for something like that, I would definitely recommend this. Again, this is another romance. The 3 books I've gone over so far are all romance category. That is my favorite category to read, and I would recommend this as well. I would give this maybe 3 out of 5 stars because it's fun, but I wouldn't say the writing is oh my god, out of this world, innovative, whatever. It's just an easy read. So that was Well Met. Taking a big turn, the next book I'm going to talk about is Persepolis. I never know how to say this correctly. It's a graphic novel. A lot of people have read this book. Some people read this in school. I found it pretty eye-opening. It's about a girl growing up in Tehran and all the political stuff that's going on and the wars and just how people lived back then and how it was a scary time. It just took me a couple days to read since it's a graphic novel. It's kind of got a heavy topic, so it's definitely not a light read. It's probably good to educate yourself about this type of, that things happen like this in the real world. It's definitely eye-opening, and I know a lot of stuff still continues to go on like this around the world in different cultures, and even in this culture potentially still. So if you want to learn about other cultures and anything like that, this is definitely worth your time. It's easy to read because it is a graphic novel, but I mean, it's not easy to read in the sense of like the topics. Like I just passed an image, like stuff like this. You know what I'm saying? If this happened to somebody in the story, which is awful. And things like, so this girl was hiding out and like the religious police that were controlling the government found her and they executed her. But in the most bizarre way, in my opinion, that as an American, I cannot understand or relate to at all because it just sounds so bizarre and horrible to me. Apparently you can't kill a virgin, so to make it so they could execute her for her crimes of whatever nonsense they believe in because she didn't follow their religion or something that was not super disclosed in the story, but there was just a lot of like persecution of people for no good reason in this country by these people in power. They forced her to marry someone who raped her and then they murdered her. But the thing also that's weird is that apparently in their culture, the man has to provide the father of the daughter a dowry, which seems a little backwards than typical like European style. So he would just send the family like $5 worth of money for their daughter, which is shitty because it's like, okay, you're gonna like send us $5 so you can basically rape and murder our child. Like, it's just horrible. So it's very educational and eye-opening and just like sad and yeah. So if you see it and you're curious about other cultures, it's a good opportunity to learn. Okay, so now completely shifting gears from that, I have the ultimate sexy books. So there's gonna probably be like an age warning for these books for sure, like 18 and plus for these books. These are gonna be the last books in the video. So if you decide to click off because you're not interested in like erotic novels, it's weird to say out loud. It was nice that you visited today's video and I'll see you in the next one. But if you are curious about these styles of like really steamy books, keep watching. So the first book I'm gonna talk about is The Mark of the Vampire Queen. Oh wait, did I do the wrong order? Oh man, I did the wrong order. Oh man, I'm so sorry. The whole description I gave was actually for this one. This is the cover of the first book. It's actually The Vampire Queen Servant is the first one. And then the one I was holding while I was describing the first one is actually the second one. So I'm so sorry for mixing that up. But like, this is the first one, the description I just gave, The Vampire Queen Servant. And then this is the second one, The Mark of the Vampire Queen. So I read 4 books in this series. I'm going to talk about 4 of them. It's by a woman named Joey Hill. It's literally marked as paranormal erotic romance. So you know this is no joke. I actually picked this book up at the used bookstore that's in my town. I was coming home from work on the bus and I was a little tired. So I dozed off and I missed my stop, so I went like 2 stops too far. It's not a big deal, like it's on the same street, it's just like 4 blocks farther from where I would normally get off. And I was close to the bookstore, so I was like, oh, whatever, like I accidentally went too far, so I might as well just stop by the bookstore before I head home. And I found this book, so I got it. It was like $6 or something. But yeah, so this is a world with vampires. People don't typically know that there are vampires in this world, but the thing with the vampires is that they have these 3rd marked servants. I don't even need to air quote it, they're servants, right? But they're like linked to them by blood if they 3rd mark someone, right? So you have to first mark them, 2nd mark them, 3rd mark them. It's like a whole process. But anyway, once you're 3rd marked, like the vampire can know where you're located, can read your thoughts when you're 2nd marked, and then it's just like their lives are bound to you when you're 3rd marked. So if you're the servants are always humans, and when they 3rd mark them, it extends their life potentially like 3 times long, so they could live to be like 300 years old, these humans. And the bond is also highly sexual, but like these vampires are kinky as hell. Like they make these servants do some crazy shit with like other servants. Like this guy, for whatever reason, saw this vampire. He used to be a vampire hunter, And when he saw her for the first time, he like knew his destiny was to be with her and to be her servant, and he was like very in love with her, which is not what's typically expected of a vampire-servant relationship. This vampire just expects the servant to do whatever they say. If they want them to fuck some other servant, like they have to do it. But the thing is, it's not like forced, it's not like slavery or anything like that. It's all willing because their connection is that strong. Like they'll do something degrading or have sex with someone that they don't care about just because they want to please their vampire master. It's twisted, I swear to God. The first time I read this, first book in the series, I was like kind of like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like how could he like degrade himself that way for her? Like I was just like kind of mad at her for doing it. But like once you're like invested in this world, you kind of get it, and you like overlook these weird like BDSM type relationships. But then also, besides that, like the writing is actually really, really good, and the plot is really, really good. The author, I give her hella props, because in this book and in the second one, which is with the same couple, they have fights that are the most believable fights and arguments I've ever read. Like a lot of the times, like in the other romance series I talked about in my last video, they're really fun and they're steamy and stuff, but their fights at the end, it like usually causes a climax in the story, not like in the sex. But their fights don't make sense. It's just like one character's being stupid and that's that. But like these fights feel so real and like so believable, and you feel for both sides. Like you feel why this guy is so frustrated with her and so angry with her, and you can really understand why she holds back or feels a certain way or like is hesitant to commit herself to things. It's so realistic. Snaps to that. But anyway, the plot of the first one is that this guy, Jason, sees the vampire. Her name is, sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head. Lissa. The vampire's name is Lissa, and she's like the oldest vampire in the whole world. She's like over 1,000 years old or something, or close to it. And Jacob just really wants to be her servant. He got trained by her last servant, who she had to abandon for complications with her husband and all these things that will be revealed if you decide to read it, which I would recommend if you're age appropriate. So he comes to her to try to convince her to mark him to be her full-fledged third marked servant, and their relationship and her hesitations to doing it. She's also having some issues with her health. She's dying for some unknown cause. There's some like new vampire disease that she's struggling with and that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is definitely like BDSM. The author, like I looked up some of her other series, they tend to be very like BDSM-esque. It's definitely master, slave, but not like anything forced typically in her series. But well written. And you're gonna most likely learn something new about the sexual world that you've never heard of before, because I was learning things from the descriptions in this that I was like, how is that even physically possible? And also her descriptions are really good, so you're never really like lost in what's going on. Like she can create a scene in your mind very well, so it's not like you're like, wait, what? Where's this limb? Where? You know, like she's good at that in a, I would say respectable, but I mean it's basically book porn, you know, I'm not gonna lie, it's basically book porn. But you can follow where she's going, and she's very good at describing like where everybody is in the scene, so you're not lost. So that's the first one, and then there's a second one with the same couple as the main heroes. But like this is the first one, the description I just gave, the vampire queen servant, and then this is the second one, the mark of the vampire queen. Okay, so giving a bit of it away, he ends up getting marked. But the thing is, with the first one that I was kind of frustrated with, is it ends with like a cliffhanger, but it just feels like an incomplete story. It just doesn't feel closed off. So the second one definitely like makes more of a conclusion in their whole story, which is satisfying. Whereas the first one, you're kind of like, what? Like they were talking about a lot of plot points in the first one that they never reach, and they reach in the second one. But like, I didn't like that part. It just feels like the two books should just be one book. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, it doesn't make sense. They both don't make sense without each other. But yeah, so that's why I definitely had to buy the second one, because I was invested in these two characters and I had to get the second one, which I just got off Amazon. So the second one Jason and Lissa, they have to go to this huge like vampire council, we'll call it a convention. Like it's basically this huge mansion in like South America where hundreds of vampires gather to talk politics and also have a sexy good time. And they make their servants do all these obscene, crazy things, like you just need to read it to find out. And Jason is kind of picking up his role a bit better. Lissa's kind of more comfortable with relying on him and such like that. So it's just a continuation of the first one, but I still definitely recommend it if you're into that kind of sexy, steamy stuff. But it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Like I definitely couldn't recommend it to everyone. Like if you just want something sweet and cute and like romantic, this is definitely not the series for you. This is like definitely romantic, definitely can be sweet at times, but it's mostly like pretty brutal. And I don't know, I'm just for the author. Like she's a really good writer. Like you feel for these people, you feel for their backstories, which I did also in the next two books I'm going to talk about. So the next two books, 3 and 4 in the Joey Hill Vampire Queen series that I read, I did on Kindle. And it's A Vampire's Claim and Beloved Vampire. So A Vampire's Claim is about a vampire named Lady Daniela. She lives in Australia and she meets this bushman named Devlin. And he's had a lot of hard history with like his family getting murdered and having to go to war, and he just has a lot of demons in his closet. And Lady Danielle's never had a marked servant before. She's like young for vampire standards. She's only like 200 years old. So she's just really inevitably drawn to Devlin, and he's just drawn to her, and he wants to help care for her and help her reclaim her land from these other vampires that were trying to take advantage of her mother before she passed. And she's trying to help him fight his demons. So she makes him her servant kind of against his will, but he's like, the first time she does it kind of sneakily for the first mark. The second mark he was kind of pissed off because he saw it happen, like he knew it was happening. And then she marked him the third time against his will because she thought it was for his benefit, because he was trying to risk his life to protect her, and she thought marking him a third time because it helps with healing and strength, and it just makes a human stronger overall. She thought it would help him, accomplish his task that he was doing to save her. So they were both trying to like save each other. But yeah, their story's really, I would say their story's pretty sweet, even though again it still has that like obviously master-servant relationship. I also kind of like the fact that in these 3 books, the master vampire is a female, so it's like a strong female. She's like, yeah, I'm in charge of this man, So I like that. But yeah, it was also cool like learning more about just the Australian landscape, and I think it was better that I read this on Kindle because they use a lot of like Australian terminology that I've never heard of before, so I could always just click the word and like figure out what it was. Like he says Sheila all the time, which just means like girl. Like he would just refer to her as a Sheila, or like other women as Sheilas, which is just slang for like woman. So, things you learn every day. So that one was really sweet. I like that one too. Less intense than the previous one, though there was one scene that was like hella intense. But yeah, okay. And then Beloved Vampire, we finally switched. So we have a male vampire. His name is Mason. So all these characters know each other. Like Lady Daniela knows Lady Lissa from the first 2 books, but the timeline like goes back in time for Daniela's story, because in the first 2 books, like we already know them. Like Devlin is like her servant for like 80 years by the time when we meet him in the first 2 books, but they go back to like when their relationship started in the 3rd book. So there's a lot of time jumping. And then in the 4th book, Mason, Lord Mason also knows Lady Lissa from the 1st book and Lady Daniela as well. But this is back on like the timeline of the 1st book, so it's in the future, like after the things that happened in the 1st book, we go into Mason's story for the timeline. And Mason is heartbroken over his first love, which was a human. He marked her as a servant. He like lives out in the desert in the Middle East, in the Sahara. I think that's Africa. Whatever. So he lived out in like the Sahara Desert for a good while. where he met his first love, a human who he marked as a servant, but her family was like super conservative and, you know, whatever that culture is out there, so they ended up trying to kill him, thinking he was some kind of monster that wasn't a vampire, like some other monster that was in their culture. But because they had his monster history wrong, they couldn't actually kill him. And then they found the daughter, because the daughter he was in love with tried to come after him and save him, even though it was impossible, and they ended up killing her as well. They tortured her for days. So it really hurt Mason because he was like nearby, but he couldn't do anything. And usually like they can communicate in each other's mind, like they can read, like I said before, there's mind reading involved in the second mark. This is so complicated. I'm like telling you everything. We can just chill here. This video is gonna be so long. But because they thought he was a different monster, they did some like magical stuff to him, and even though it didn't kill him, it broke their bond for mind reading, so he couldn't even tell her that like he was there for her, like he was trying to save her, even though he was like trapped, like buried underground. So the family was telling her that like he just ran off and abandoned her, so she died with that thought in mind, and she was yelling and cursing him and being like he could hear her in her mind, but he couldn't communicate back, right? This is a lot of context that I might cut, but whatever. So she died without knowing he still loved her, and that broke his heart. And then the new main character, like the main character in the story, is this girl named Amanda. I'm pretty sure her name is Amanda. That's like a really basic name. No, it's Jessica. So that's just Mason's like backstory. So there's this girl, Jessica, who had been captured by this evil vampire, and he marked her twice, and he had tortured her for like 5 years, like doing all these horrible things, like sexual things against her will, like horrible, degrading, disgusting things to her, and even like just chaining her in a cell and letting like rats like run all over her and like nip at her, and just like normal horrible things, not just only sexual things, even though there was a lot of sexual horrible things this guy did to her. So she was traumatized, and then this horrible vampire was going to try to third mark her, and the day he was going to do it, this is Jessica's backstory, these vampire hunters broke into his place with all his goonies, and they were trying to kill him, but he ran off with Jessica. He was dragging her along because he likes torturing her. But he got hurt, he was weakened, and Jessica took the opportunity to kill him. Like, he was in the middle of third marking her, so like he took her blood and gave her the serum for the third mark. But to complete the third mark, the human has to take blood from the vampire, right? It's a 2-step process. So he half third marked her. So when she killed him, it like, usually when a vampire is killed, their third marked servant dies as well, because their lives are linked, like I told you before. This is so much information, but whatever. We can just chill together. It usually kills them. This isn't as complicated to explain when you've already read the first 3 books, because you know how the world works, but since you don't know how the world works, and this is important to understand the story, like I have to explain everything to you. But anyway, she was half marked, so when she killed him, she like didn't die, but like she was dying. So she became like decrepit, and she looked like twice her age, or like 3 times her age, when she was only like a 24-year-old woman. But while she was captured by him, she had found this, the evil vampire had like this archive of all these books and stuff, and she used to be like a researcher or something, so that was like in her history. She found this diary of this woman who ended up being the woman that Mason was in love with hundreds of years ago, like 300 years ago, who died in the earlier description that I gave you. So she was like really attached to this story for whatever reason, and when she escaped, she actually went back for the diary and then wanted to go find this woman's tomb, because she had been doing research, because she's a researcher, that there was some kind of tomb that was left behind of this woman, and she wanted to die there. So she goes looking for it, and she ends up finding it, and that's where she meets Mason. Mason is kind of pissed because she brought these, she led these other guys, these bad guys, to the tomb even though she didn't intend to, so like Mason like murdered them. And then saw Jessica was dying, and he felt pity for her, so he third marked her to save her life. So she gets like rejuvenated back to like her normal self. Now she's extra strong because she's third marked, but she's so scarred and traumatized from how she was treated, and she has these horrible like lash scars all down her back, like scars and stripes. Sorry if you can hear all the street noise. can never tell which direction it's coming from. So he saves her out of pity. And then another thing that you kind of need to know is that when a vampire third marks someone, the human gets this physical, I don't know, this actual physical mark on their body that's between a scar and a tattoo. So like Devlin's mark is like a raven scar on his chest. Jason's, I'm so sorry. This is so annoying. Jason's scar is like this huge thing on his back that's like a tattoo of like a serpent or something, I don't know, or like a dragon. I think a dragon, I forget. But her scar is like a tattoo on her inner thigh, like high up on her inner thigh, which matches the same mark that the woman who fell in love with had. Mind you, the vampires have no control of what these marks look like. It's some kind of magic that they don't fully understand. So he was very shocked by this and felt a connection with her. So he brings her back to his place and he's trying to help her heal from the horribleness that happened to her. And he doesn't want to force her to be her third servant, his third servant. Mind you, he already has 2 third servants, but he's not like emotionally as connected to them as he was with his first love and like how some of the characters in these past 3 books were. But he feels a really deep connection with her, like he did with his first love, that could potentially like be something really strong, but he doesn't want to force her because this poor girl has gone through so much. And she's trying to find herself again and be a strong, brave woman again. And it's really, this one is actually the sweetest one out of them. Mason doesn't do any like crazy shit to her, and it's not like explicit as some of the other ones. It's more innocent relatively. But yeah, seeing how much he loves her and wants the best for her is really sweet. So I definitely recommend this series. I don't know if I'm gonna read any more anytime soon because I think I just need to take a break from the intensity of the style. But I definitely enjoy Joey Hill's writing. I'd be interested to see some of her other books and other series. We'll just see how it goes. So those are all the books that I read in February and March. Please let me know what you think. I know it's not in everybody's taste, and I know not everybody's gonna wanna read like crazy books like the vampire series. Let me know if you have any book recommendations yourself. Personally, like, as you can tell, I really do love a good love story. Those are the easiest books for me to read. I fly through them if they're good, and I'm like, okay, it took me forever because I didn't like it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, please do down below. And if you are subscribed, an extra thank you to you. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.